We interrupt your regularly scheduled Lucha Libre wrestling match to present something of just a bit more cultural and literary value. Ladies and gentlemen, in this corner, I am Cobalt Manticore. I am hereby here to read this, the second short story contest winning short story by local author, Brian Lee. You'll recall last year he wrote the twisting turning extraterrestrial dark demonic but special story entitled The Merchant of Venus. Well, this time he's back and takes us for a trip through the dark nighttime woods, through time itself and whatever we define as civilization with the story Whose Fenceline Is It Anyway? Let us now begin. Whose Fenceline is it anyways? The coffee shop was crowded. People had practically taken every seat that wasn't occupied by any other particular student or group. In other words, this was a typical Thursday downtown. It wasn't much to his liking though. He just didn't do crowds, but to him a crowd was any group of people more than 3 in number, and even that few had to be quiet and low-key in order to sit right with him, to be to his liking. He'd taken a window seat and so he focused his awareness, comfortably escaping being overwhelmed by too much activity, and patiently awaited who he was supposed to be meeting here. It wasn't long before he was joined, however, as his guest had arrived in his typical late and unreliable fashion. This guest moved in hurried, scurrying movements that reminded him of a criminal ducking being spotted by the authorities. It wasn't long before their eyes met and locked, and they became each other's oasis in this sea of commerce and community. The guest rapidly took his seat as if it were a race against someone else to claim that one seat directly across from this sitter. Wow, traffic here was attempted murder. Shaking off his hat and draping his coat over the chair's back now. Can you believe that at one time Meridian was less than 10 lanes? The sitter had to smirk, and commented, "Meridian, huh? Whatever you say." "This one of your crazy theories on?" He was interrupted by his newly arrived guest. "Yes, it is. I'm telling you, Bellingham did exist. Not as we know it now, mind you, but it did." The sitter nodded warily. There was no use arguing this point. There never was. "Whatever you say, but you understand people are going to require proof of this claim." Turns out that's what was provided. This is a virtual reality headset, and it is going to help me prove to you my theory on this place. That there at one time existed creatures much like ourselves with but a few significant differences. The sitter was beginning to regret agreeing to meet up here. This was much too public a place to be seen wearing this awkward and outlandish get-up on his head. He froze with nervousness, eyeing the helmet-like device sitting on the table as if it were a dangerous animal that could not safely be ignored. "And all you gotta do is put it on. I have the program running and ready. All you have to do is relax and enjoy the ride." A deep intake of air and the helmet was donned. His awareness sharpened as his eyes slowly opened upon a whole different scene. It was dimly lit under this thick overcovering of broken off and thickly needled branches domed over his head. Dew had collected on his fur, he noticed as he stood up. He rubbed a massive hand over his face as if to clean off the first of the dew and the last of his sleepiness. He was not alone either, but the others were sleeping. Similar dark furred forms lay in various positions, including his brother. Whistlefang would of course be the last to awaken and the first one wanting to go home. He was a talker, not a doer. Wouldn't lodge off in amusement. He preferred action over making noises, as action was what got things done. This was what he planned to do, and the night was still young. It wasn't long before his long flowing gait defined his progress along the bark and mud-paved trails. He moved like a shadow through the trees, like fog blown by a breeze through the thicket. Occasionally stopping to snap a branch for the others to follow, the brake pointing the direction they should follow. He'd stop and listen for turn-knocks to make sure the others were nearby and initiate one of his own in case others were listening. He arrived at the first of his several rock stacks. Not only handy root markers but small hibernating rodents made their nests in these, and they were an especially taste, if not filling, delicacy. His real goal was the river. It would be filled to ridiculous amount with salmon trying to swim their blind and mindless route upstream to spawn and die. His route had changed though, and not by him. It appeared to be a small barkless tree rooted before him, twined tightly with a hard gray and dark thorned vine of some type. In fact, there was a row of them set unnaturally straight and evenly spaced. He felt watched. He looked around and saw it. It looked almost like him but smaller and was covered in multiple colors of hides. This was a mystery upon a mystery, and he stood motionless eye to eye with the smaller intruder. What was this being, and what did this enclosed border it built around itself mean? Was it to keep Wooden Claw and his kind out, or was it to keep this small being contained in? This was too much to think on. His perspective wasn't ready for this shift, and he removed the helmet and pushed it away from himself to his guest. That was something. So you've just shown me a bit about the mysterious beings you say used to live around here. I never believed they existed, let alone live out in those woods. An enthusiastic nod across the table as Wistlafang stuffed the virtual reality helmet inside his pack. Yep, and could you believe that we used to be the mythical creatures that they didn't believe existed? It was both harder to believe it all yet more plausible now. Not only did Sasquatch exist back in forgotten history, that was a given, but human creatures did too. Then there was the matter of the Fenceline. Who made it and for what? Whose Fenceline was it anyways? Well, this has been the second audio video Brian Lee short story for www.whatcomrades.org. Have a great night everyone. Remember, you are never alone, you are always watched. Ha 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 ha.